After this latest loss, Mick Cronin is somewhat turning into Chip Kelly 2.0.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever it's your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. And if you've been tuning in to this podcast and the UCLA season as a whole, in its length and its entirety, you would know the Bruins have been utterly disappointing this season. Preseason top 10 by John Rothstein. I came out and said yet again, this is a team that could and should be able to get to a deeper part of the tournament than they did last year. Well, apparently UCLA is looking to be way worse than last year's team. They have Noah Diamara. It seems like they have less depth, but more talent. I'm not really sure what's going on. They're way worse defensively, and Mick Cronin doesn't seem to have a direction for this team, which gives me the worry that the Bruins are turning into the way the football program did in the basketball court, right? The difference is, with basketball, the Bruins were a long-time blue blood, and now the argument is the Bruins haven't been doing anything the last 3 decades plus since they last won with the 1995 team with the dear guest, dear friend of the show, Chris Johnson, of those 4 letters. They haven't won in that long. Obviously, they've been to the Final Four. They've had some successes, but those Final Fours mostly been Howland, early 2000s. Then that 2021 run in the bubble, I'm not going to say bubble made a difference. It might have, but UCLA goes in the first 4 to a Final Four run. And if you start comparing Mick Cronin and Chip Kelly, you're starting to see, all right, what seems to be a lack of interest in high school recruiting. The thing about basketball is a freshman can make a big difference in basketball compared to football. There are some outliers, but you go look at Arizona, they got a couple of freshmen, Koa Pete, Braden Burries, both guys UCLA could have gotten, and now Arizona's number 1. Last year, Duke was led by Cooper Flagg. Now, he was a Northeastern kid, a little different, but you go after a Burries, you go after a Koa Pete, guys who UCLA looked at, but they're like, nah. And it's not that those freshmen did too much against UCLA in that game when they played in the Intuit Dome, but that's just an example. Arizona goes from competitive to number 1 team, number 1, number 2 team in the country, unbeaten with 3 major wins this year, 2 or 3 major wins for the Wildcats. I'm not going to comment about what their postseason is going to look like under Tommy Lloyd. That's not the point. Mick Cronin, what has he done? I've been trying to pump myself up for Mick Cronin because the best team Mick Cronin ever had was devastated by injuries. Adem Bona's shoulder, Jalen Clark's Achilles, and the Bruins' dream team was dead. A half-court buzzer beater crushed UCLA in the Final Four, but they still would have been underdogs if they played Baylor in the championship, although UCLA was continuing what would have been an all-time run. Think about this. You look at Chip Kelly. His chance to get to the national championship game as an Oregon head coach with Auburn was derailed because a guy wasn't tackled with his knee to the ground. I don't care about the Oregon Ducks, but that's how close he got. Mick Cronin's best run came with an unheralded run with Johnny Juzang coming out of nowhere to dominate. Jaime Jaquez Jr. was growing, Jalen Clark was growing, and the Bruins did it with an undersized center, couple of upsets, and made their run go. Then they lost to North Carolina, who the Bruins should have been able to close out a year later. Then they fall a year later, heartbreakingly, to Gonzaga, all right? And the list of excuses now begins to grow because the Bruins, after that little mini run, go miss the tournament, bunch of transfers, kind of foregoing high school recruiting, get Trent Perry dumped, if you will, in their lap because the likes of Andy Enfield leaves to go to SMU, so they are gifted a McDonald's All-American high school recruit, and the Bruins, at their best, go to a second round. And the team that's supposed to be so much better loses one of their most important pieces in a Diamara. You see all the other players who are doing well. I think you had Chris Johnson pointing out on social media that at FAU, you have Devin Williams, who was in the program for a couple of years at UCLA, hitting threes and blocking shots. Imagine if UCLA had that in their lineup consistently, or just somebody to pair against Xavier Booker. All right, a shooter from 3 and a shot blocker. If you had 2 of those, then you would have to rely so much on Booker, or go to San Diego and find Steven Jamerson as your true backup big, where if he's your third big, that team could be a little bit better. But the Bruins' true center option is at Michigan. And you know what Michigan is right now? A super team. And don't worry, yes, I know Michigan just barely beat Penn State, but that team has generally just been boat racing teams. They had Lendenberg, they got Mara, they got Ellie Cadeau, they got more players, and I can't wait to see what UCLA is going to go do against Michigan on Valentine's Day in Ann Arbor. I do not think it'll be pretty, and it'll be a bad day for the Bruins. Now you pivot to what's actually going on the court right now. Program going in the wrong direction, truly relying on transfer portal recruiting. A lot of these schools are, whether it's football, basketball, okay, but the Bruins aren't building a culture. Cronin is not at Cincinnati anymore, not even at Murray State at the beginning of his career. He touts the amount of wins he has, and yes, I'll give it to him. You had Sky Clark out, a guy who has been red hot, hitting a bunch of his threes, more than half his threes, averaging 18 points per game when he plays the full games, more than 30 minutes since the Cal game. Then you had the likes of Trent Perry busting his chin a little bit tonight. You had Brandon Williams getting knocked around. But Xavier Booker comes in and plays a minute, right? He wasn't even in the starting lineup. I don't know the full story about that, but then Steven Jamerson comes in, plays 11 minutes. Everything was kind of going every which way, and they play their hearts out, but you can't, for the second straight game on the road in the Big Ten, go down by 20 plus in the first half. It's fun to watch them do it every once in a while. All right, you're down 20, they make it a game. They did that against Illinois last year in Champaign. Oh, they did it against Iowa. Rough game out of the new year, 10 plus long days, cool. But the problem is UCLA is going to have to make this trip again in just a week. They come back, have a home game, then they go to Penn State, who just played Michigan to the end of regulation in a 2-point game. They go to Ohio State. They're going to make this trip again, and how is UCLA going to get any better? And is it Mick Cronin's fault that the Bruins went to the Big Ten? No, under no circumstances. Could the Bruins have been good in the Pac-12? Well, last year the Bruins were in the Pac-12. They had one of their worst years ever and were somewhat embarrassing, even though they played better at the end of the year, which I do expect for this year's team. But it all comes on the heels of a surprisingly weird announcement on how Mick Cronin was extended. Wasn't announced at the time, sneakily put out there by Ben Bolter of the LA Times that, oh yeah, wait, UCLA actually extended this dude for like 5 more years after the Gonzaga loss. So when the Bruins are consistently failing to win marquee games, now they can't simply win a conference road game because they're not going to play an empty Cal arena. They're not going to go play at an empty Maples Pavilion. Although I love playing Cal, I love playing Stanford, I love all those Pac-12 rivalries. It's a little different, right? Every school has their strengths and weaknesses. UCLA is not making us excited in the non-conference, whether it's win or lose with big matchups. They're shying away from the Thanksgiving tourneys. Apparently, they're making more money to play the neutral site games, not even winning those against Cal, Arizona, or Gonzaga. And now you're traveling all the way on the road to go lose to these Midwest teams where Wisconsin's punking Eric Daly Jr. at the end of the game. And what are you going to do about it? They lose by 8, but they are trailing by double digits the majority of the game. It's frustrating. It absolutely is frustrating, and it's getting to the borderline part that it's embarrassing. Wisconsin has only 3 to 4 scores. So why do they have 3 guys getting 12 or more points? 4 guys getting 12 or more points. 3 guys putting in 17 or more, right? Getting punked by Nolan Winters. I can insert a lot of words there, blah, 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 for what he's trying to do to EDJ at the end of the game. But UCLA is just looking lethargic. Well, like, what's going on? Is it something wrong? Is the fit with Donovan Dent not that good? Are the players just not confident? Can they not score? It's the inability for Mick Cronin to adapt. Maybe he says, man, I did not have this team ready defensively, or he knew he would have weaknesses, but expected Adai Mara to return. And then all of a sudden it turned into a bit of a slander campaign when Adai Mara left to Michigan. Well, he's doing just fine over there, getting more minutes. Why can't Mick Cronin succeed with a guy over 6'9" at center? Right? Whether it's Booker, who looks more like a 4, Jamerson, who might not be a full-time Big Ten 5, then why can't they rotate somebody who's good, and instead their next center is Javonte Floyd, who looks good from Georgia, but he's also an undersized center? Why does Cronin have to live with that again and again and again? Here the Bruins are trying to, go do good things. I think when UCLA stays on the West Coast for an extended amount of time, that's when they'll go on their run. Just like they did last year, a light bulb will flick on. But all of a sudden, they still got to play 2 of the next 3 Big Ten games on the road, further away from home, further away than this Wisconsin and Iowa trip was. They'll be just as energetic outside of the Penn State game. But how are we supposed to get fans in there and get excited for that lone home game and then send them out for 2 more games. And oh, by the way, after their next 3 games, when they start playing a lot more games at home, they start with Purdue at home in a midweek game. If we're a true fan base, we're going to sell that game out. But how are we going to do that on a Tuesday night? All right, after a long holiday weekend. Those are further problems compared to what UCLA had tonight. 1 of 17 from 3, missed 8 free throws. Now, they didn't turn the basketball over, but Mick Cronin's calling card is deflections, forcing turnovers, doing what it takes to get Wisconsin up the score sheet. Wisconsin just put up 80. Iowa's putting up points. UCLA is capable of putting up points, maybe a little less so with no Sky Clark in the lineup. They lose by 8. That's a guy that's been averaging 13 points. Trent Perry put up 15. I like what he did, aggressive in 31 minutes despite having a bandaged chin. But so far, the Bruins aren't making the most of a highly paid, highly compensated, is probably the better phrasing, Donovan Dent. All right, this isn't a Donovan Dent slander campaign or smear campaign, but if the Bruins went all out to go get a guy like that, then you're looking at Bilodeau, 16 points, okay, but he missed 4 of his free throws after making 24 straight this year. 24 straight heading into Saturday. Now he's not making free throws. You've got Eric Daly Jr., who's had a slow start, completely lost his three-point shooting stroke, and the Bruins are suffering for it. Jamar Brown's taken that step up from JUCO to Summit League to the Big Ten, and he's fouling out in 16 minutes on 4 shots. The Bruins are making some silly foul mistakes, doing their best, and again, UCLA allowing almost close to 25 to 30 free throws by their opponent, and the Bruins are on the losing end. On the losing end. UCLA in this game led for 23 seconds. You look at the last couple of games, UCLA's played 80 minutes. I don't think they've led for more than a minute. I don't know the numbers of Iowa in front of me, but it's pretty pathetic for what the Bruins have done right now. The Bruins are now 10-5. The majority of those wins are against mid-majors or opponents that won't even boost up your resume. UCLA is going from in the tournament to on the bubble to flat out not even in the conversation for the bubble. The Bruins have opportunities to make this happen and make this change this year. And Cronin always tends to do this. They'll play well. And the beauty of college basketball is this. He can play himself onto a much safer seat. But that warm seat's getting hot. Unfortunately, what UCLA did with Chip Kelly, reward him for a decent season and extend him. And UCLA's athletic department, Martin Jarman namely, let him walk away and the Bruins had a restart. Now we're with Bob Chesney era. Well, UCLA basketball had very brief moments of success, if any, under Steve Alford. Their best was a Sweet 16 to take over for a boring Ben Howland. And then they went back to boring, and the boring was successful until it's not. We're forgetting high school recruiting. Portals aren't always going to hit and miss, the portal transfers. The Bruins aren't playing exciting brand of basketball. And now, with how UCLA has to play a bunch of home games and aren't playing big-name premier matchups on TV, the amount of traveling they have to do during the conference season, we're kind of, all right, it's just some team that's on the road playing. We don't even know what these Bruins are. I really don't. Because Cronin can't adapt to make them score 85 to 90 one year. If it's like, hey, my defense sucks, let's go do something flat out crazy and score. That's not what UCLA's doing. Yet in college basketball, he can go on a run. That's the fun, stupid thing about this sport. NC State, their coach was about to be fired. They go on a run in the ACC tournament, and the Wolfpack went to the Final Four. This team, because we've seen much worse teams, more Cinderella-like squads go on a Final Four run. UCLA, it's not out of the equation. The way they're playing, yes, it sounds stupid for me to say that. But in this sport, we have seen the most underdog of runs, and that's how Mick Cronin did it just 5 years ago in 2021. Do I think this team is capable at this moment? Absolutely not. Yet the Bruins have fought and played hard in most games, just not for a full 40 minutes. How do you get boat raced off the block, off the jump, back-to-back Big Ten games on the road? That's where you're supposed to have the juice on the road, because you're not going to get it at Pauley Pavilion. The Bruins haven't done it, and the fans are showing up for the women's games when they play USC. The men haven't deserved the crowds. They haven't showcased anything worth playing for watching right now. Now they can fix it. There is still time, a full January, February, couple of weeks of March, end of the season / Big Ten tournament before you get to an NCAA tournament. And if you're on the bubble, the branding, as we saw with North Carolina last year, would do enough just to get you in the tourney. generally speaking, if you're UCLA. But who's to say they don't get embarrassed if they make it in the first four, in the first round? And we're continuing to do this again and again. Southern California has some of the better prospects in high school recruiting these last couple of years into the future, and the Bruins just aren't landing these guys. What made UCLA's Pac-12 winning team good the last time they won a conference? They balanced the seniors. They balanced the freshman talent, the five-star talent in Dembona and Amari Bailey. They had two freshmen. They had the seniors and the development of it all. Now the transfer portal has gotten a lot crazier. The Bruins have had to deal with an NIL battle like none before, probably leading to the end of the Diamar era at UCLA. Yet here we are now with the direction. Are they recruiting the high school kids consistently? Are they going out there and getting the best portal kids to fill every need? Or is it one big splash and just kind of stopgaps everywhere else with Jamar Brown, Booker right now, with Steven Jamerson, Anthony Peoples Jr., who's just sitting there riding the bench? It's frustrating. It is absolutely frustrating to watch. So Mick Cronin absolutely is turning into Chip Kelly 2.0. The fun, stupid, crazy thing about this sport, one simple run in March into April, and it'll shut us all up. It will. And that's what's crazy and why we got to stick and watch this team all season long, because the craziest part of the schedule isn't even here. They still got to go to Michigan, Michigan State, host Purdue, host Illinois, play USC twice, go to Oregon, host Washington, who almost beat them. Ridiculous. Do they have what it takes? With the way they're playing, UCLA might end up under 500. Do I think they will? I think they'll figure it out to a point. But that ceiling is getting much lower by the game, by the day, by the week. So Cronin, his time is ticking to simply not be a Chip Kelly 2.0. There's a reason why they shared a horse in horse racing and why they were buds. Because apparently they're just the same guy. One's a little more quotable and more funny to listen to in post-game interviews. The other one is just standoffish. While Cronin, a lot more standoffish with the intensity he brings to his practices. Cronin, loud, fun, engaging to the media because he understands it. Kelly didn't care and he was fired by the Raiders. And didn't make any sense. I really have no answers. The job's up to Cronin. Can he figure this team out? Can he figure this team's strengths out so they minimize their weaknesses and that can lead to wins and more entertaining wins and building a resume? Because right now, if you're trying to build a resume, trying to put one on a job service site, the Bruins don't have one if they're trying to appeal to the selection committee to get inside the tournament. They really don't. Arizona State at home. After that, what do you got? Nada. Not a damn thing. That's why you get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked on UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.